Is a consistent podcast schedule important? All right, if you don't want to listen to the episode, stop right here. The short answer is yes. The short answer is absolutely, but there's more to it than that. It is a little bit more complicated in my mind. We are going to dig into that in just 1 second here on the Podcast Accelerator with me, Mr. Mark Asquith, that British podcast guy and CEO and co-founder of Rebel-Based Media, the UK tech company that builds podcasting technology, including the managed WordPress platform, podcast websites, and of course, Captivate.fm, the world's only growth-oriented podcast host. So go and check it out for your podcast hosting. It's hosting, but not as you know it, Jim. Go and check it out. Now, we are going to talk about a consistent podcasting schedule, but like I said, there is a little bit more to it than just yes, you should have a consistent schedule, because what does consistent mean? Who is that for? Who is consistency aimed at? Is it you? Is it the listener? Like, who are we talking about here? So let's dig into that in a second. But before I do, I'm going to give a quick shout out to the team at AWeber who allow me to interact with you, my ever-present and amazingly appreciated listener. Thank you to the team at AWeber for letting me email you. You see, what I do is, you might not know this, but I've got this 9 unconventional ways to grow your podcast giveaway. You go to markasquith.com/grow, or if you're listening on the Captivate embedded player, hit the up arrow and you'll see a call to action in there. Go and get that. That's actually powered by AWeber. So what happens is, I will basically say to you, you're going to get popped on my list. Tick the box to say you're all right with that. You'll get subscribed to AWeber, you get the download, and then from there on, you'll get updates about the show and everything else as well. So that's how it works. That's how I can grow my email list and engage with you, the ever-present, ever-growing podcaster. You could be doing the same with your audience, all right? So go and check it out. Go and check AWeber out. markasquith.com/AWeber for 90 days free. So podcasting is such a flexible medium, like hyper flexible. You can essentially do whatever the heck you like, can't you? I mean, you can. All right, you can do what you want. But your audience expects it to be really clear when you publish. So, do you need a consistent schedule or just really good communication? Well, I think a little bit of both. So, let's add a little bit of context to this. When we're talking about publishing schedule, we're talking about the frequency and the consistency with which you are publishing episodes. If you say you're going to do it every week, you better turn up and do it every single week. If you say you're going to do it once a month, that's all right. Nothing wrong with that. Do it once a month, twice a month, fine. If you're going to do seasons, all well and good. But the key thing here is communicating that. If you have a consistent schedule, it's very, very important to communicate that. Communicate. Tell people what to expect. If you're going to have a break, but tell people up front on the show, listen, guys, in 3 weeks' time, I'm going to have a break. And then, importantly, tell them when you're coming back. In 3 weeks' time, I'm going to have a break and I'll be back 2 weeks later. All right? It's very, very important to communicate. Okay? So that's the key thing. First and foremost, the caveat, get it out the way. If you're going to have a break, it doesn't matter what your schedule is, just please communicate that. Now, what about the schedule itself? What about a consistent podcast schedule? What does this mean? Who are we actually devising the schedule for? We've got to be really clear on this. There's no point devising a schedule that your listeners want or that you believe that they want, which is often the case, unless we survey people. We don't know what they want. Unless you actually create a schedule that suits you as well, as in you can maintain that, then you're going to die a death. And it's much easier to add to that schedule than it is to remove from it, okay? So as an example of that, let's say that you think I'm going to start a 7-day-a-week show. All right, fine. If you want to do that, all well and good, but you better make sure that you've got the schedule to make every episode really, really good. And you've got the capacity and the bandwidth to do that. Because if you haven't, people aren't going to tune in because the quality is not going to be there. You can publish as much as you like, but if it's crap, no one's listening. All right, fact. But if you say to yourself, well, do you know what? I'd like to do a 5-day-a-week show. But, I'm struggling for time a little bit. Maybe I should start with a once-a-week show. That's what we're talking about here when it comes to who are you developing your schedule for. There's no point deciding that you're going to do something for your audience and coming out of the blocks fast and not being able to stick to it, all right? It's easier to add to the schedule than it is to remove from it. So a consistent schedule is very, very important, and communicating exactly what you're doing is completely key. That's not to say that you need to have a weekly schedule or a twice-weekly schedule or a monthly. Like, you have to find the thing that suits you. Look at Dan Carlin. Like, he publishes very, very sporadically, but when his show drops, he's kind of got a get out of jail free card because his content is like 4 or 5 hours long and it's always outstanding. So you become sort of a fan of the way that Dan does things as opposed to, well, this guy's not publishing, exactly when I expect him to. People can kind of get away with it if they've got their own brand and their own way of doing it. For the rest of us, for us normal human beings that don't have amazing brands like that, people need training up on what to expect. People need to know. It's like a TV show. If a TV show's not on for a week or not on for a month, remember I think it was 2008, the writer's strike. There was so many people and so many shows that got cancelled maybe a year later because during that break, during the writer's strike, the Writers Guild of America strike, the shows essentially stopped. They couldn't publish any new content, and they stopped. And the attrition on the users, even when people came back later on, the numbers just weren't there. Okay, not for a lot of shows, the numbers just weren't there, and they ended up dying a death a year later. There's a lot of that, like Jericho and a few of those other people that were kind of thrown into that mix. A lot of people suffered for it. Okay, so that's actually a really good example. So you've got to build a schedule that will train and educate people on what to expect from your show. So early on, you have to devise a schedule, and yes, you've got to stick to it for as long as you can to build up momentum, build up trust, build up education, build up reliability, and the fact that you're always going to be there. That's what the key is, all right? You have to be doing that. If you're sporadic, if you publish 2 weeks in a row and then, you're only 8 episodes in and actually you have a week off, like that's not good. That's not good. It's almost better to kind of batch a little bit. It's almost better to batch a little bit and actually be able to say to people, do you know what? Actually, I'm going to get ahead with this because I know that I've got to have 2 weeks off. I might just batch 2 or 3 episodes, publish them for while I'm away. When I come back, seamlessly, I'm going to pick it back up. No one will know I've even been away. Okay? If you desperately need a break, you have to tell people. Okay? I'm going to leave on this day and I'm going to be coming back on this day, okay? In the meantime, here's the back catalogue. Go ahead, crack on, okay? So, yeah, short answer, is a consistent podcast schedule important? Yes, it is. It is. But there's more to it than that, all right? Consistency, building a schedule that suits you and the listeners. More importantly, I think in the early stages, as you get bigger and bigger and bigger, listen to your listeners, survey them, okay? And then communicate your intent. What are you going to do with that schedule? If you need to change the schedule, let people know, okay? It's absolutely vital. So yes, build a consistent schedule and absolutely stick to it, all right, until you have data that shows that you need to change it. Do it. And thank you for joining me. It's always a pleasure. I love doing this. Thanks for joining me. This is, what are we on? Episode 94. So we're coming up to episode 100 just before Christmas on the 18th, actually. So thank you to everyone that supports me. Thank you to amazing people that get in touch with me every single day regarding the Accelerator Show. I appreciate you, and I love just interacting with you. So if you've got any questions, if you want your question answering, maybe you do, hit me up on Twitter at Mr. Asquith. Let me know what your question is, and I'll stick it into a future episode, all right? So thanks for joining me. Enjoy Captivate.fm for your podcast hosting, and never forget, the more you expect from yourself, the more you will excel.